What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Fighting Game tutorial series, we are going to be going over improving our character select and level/stage select screens. So specifically in this episode, we are going to cover adding names to our characters and stages while on these screens. It sounds like a small detail, but it makes a lot of difference. So right now we have the mannequin, the mutant, the vanguard, and random. Since I also have temporary characters in here, I've just named those to be locked. And so we want these names to represent who we're hovering over. Having a name identifiable by the player is very important because these images alone don't really do anything for them. Now we come to the stage select screen, and in the stage selection screen we have the ability to go through these stages, and the name of the stage is going to change while we do that. I haven't set that up right now. It's going to be very quick. We're going to do it live because I want to show you the process from start to finish. And it's going to be a really fun one. It's a small one that makes a lot of difference, has a lot of impact. If you want to get caught up in the series before checking this episode out, you can see how we've done hitboxes, commands, the input buffer, all this fun stuff. I'll link you to the playlist right here in the top right corner so you can check it all out. Alternatively, if you're only interested in the character select and stage select improvements, I'll link you to the first episode of the character select screen. That way you can see how we implemented it originally, which will of course help you implement this episode because we are building on top of the widgets that we created in those episodes. But with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series. Everything is going to be done in the blueprints today because we're going to be handling it directly on the character select and level select screen widgets. For me, this is in blueprints, widgets, menus, character select screen. Once we're in here, you'll see I have two new text boxes for today's episode. This is what I've called Player 1 Hovered Character Text and Player 2 Hovered Character Text. So basically, whenever we're moving through our options here, we want to update the names in this text box. Now, where you put it on the screen and the order you put it in doesn't really matter as long as it fits what you want with yours. But if you're following my design directly, then I'll show you what I did with mine. So I have this canvas panel inside of my main canvas panel here that has all these rows and columns of the characters. Right below that, I added two new text widgets. So we have text. You can just drag it in. I position them down here. And then I'll show you the details for each of them. So first of all, Player 1 Hovered Character Text is a variable. And here are my positions, so it's anchored top left, the default, sizes, alignment, all that good stuff. For the text itself, it just says character as a default value, but you could have it say nothing if you want. I'm also going to update the Z order to be 1. It's not required that you actually do that because, of course, it's rendering on top of everything right now. But the way Z order works is if it has the same value as another widget in this hierarchy, then whatever widget is rendered last or at the bottom of the list here is what's going to display. So where I happen to put it worked, but if you put it at a Z order of 1 and all your other Z orders were 0, then this one's going to render on top no matter where you have it in this hierarchy. You can see colors, font size, outline size, justification. I intentionally put the justification of the left character to the left side of the box. For the right character, I actually put it on the right side. And there you go. Now, actually, I think I want to change this location a little bit as well. I want it to line up with this box. Initially, I kind of liked it being offset, but I think I'm going to change mine to 450 just to get it lined up over here. I think that looks nicer. Now, for Player 2 Hovered Character Text, it is another text widget. It is a variable anchored to the top left with these positions and sizes. Text is character. Color, font, outline size, justification is right side. And I'm also going to change this position here. So let's go from 1250. We did a difference of 300 on the left side. Let's do a difference of 300 on this side. And there we go. So at this point, our character select screen looks good. Let's go into the graph. And we want to set the text of this text widget when we are in move selection, every time we're moving characters that we're on. So let's go to our move selection function, and at the very end of this behavior, I'm going to update the names accordingly. So in move selection, we have different behavior depending on what character and what direction we're moving. But basically, we just try and see if we're within the minimum and the maximum values of the characters on the screen, and if we are, we move them and update the visuals. After that, we were updating our 3D models that we're showing in there so that it's not just the widgets on the screen, but also the models that get spawned in. At the very end of all this behavior, I want to call a new function setHoveredCharacterName. This is a function we're going to create right now to determine what name we want to display to the user when they're hovering over a character. So let's add a new function, plus function, and I've called it setHoveredCharacterName. I have two input parameters, an integer, simple integer, and a text object, which is text. And you gotta look for text object reference. So here's text object reference. The integer is called hovered character index, and then the text is text to edit. Go into this function once you've created it. Basically, I've just made a quick little table for what we want to display if we're on certain selections. You could grab this from a data table, you could grab it from your locked items array. For now, I'm just hard coding them in this select statement. We can always update this later too. And here what we want to do is type select. So select allows us to determine an option based on what the index was that we passed into it. So a default select statement looks like this with the integer as the index. The hovered character index variable that we have is going to go into the index on the select statement. Now once we do this, we don't know what type of output or option we want to have, but we can assign it in the select statement. If you right click on option, any of the options or the return type will do, and select change pin type. Sometimes I can get this to work, but this time I can't. You have another option of just dragging off of the option and typing make text, and make literal text works. And now this converts the select to a string option, such as mutant, or for the option one, you can disconnect it and type mannequin, whatever your character names are. Figured I would leave that in to show you what I did to get around that issue if you're also running into that. Then you can add more pins by pressing this button. Go ahead and fill out all the options for your character select screen, and then drag the return value into a set text node on the text to edit parameter. So we drag off of text to edit, type set text in parentheses text. Then we're going to pass in the return value from our select into that text. And we get what you see here. Now we're going to go back to move selection and actually call this function. So we have set hovered character name. Set hovered character name. And we want this for player 1 and player 2. For the hovered character index, we're going to pass in current P1 selection. Current P1 selection is what the player is currently hovering over on the character select screen. So if they're over the mutant, that's index 1, we want to display the mutant. The text to edit is our new text for today, which is our player 1 hovered character text right here. Then for player 2, we're going to use cur P2 selection. And then we're going to display the player 2 hovered character text as the text to edit. And that's how you get this right here. So now our character select screen is finished. We're going to do the same for the stage select screen, but this one's going to be quicker. So if we go to our level or stage select screen, we want to add a new text element to the widget, just like on the character select. I'm putting it in the same spot, so I have a canvas panel of all my options for my stages. Then I've added the text element right below it, hovered stage text, and made it a variable. For this one, I wanted it to be centered, so I did anchor it to the middle. You don't have to do that, but makes the math a little bit easier. So anchor it to the middle, 0 on the X, 80 on the Y. Here's my sizes, my alignment. That way it's not going off the top left of this box, but the center of this box, both vertical and horizontal. For my Z order, let's make it 1 for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Speaking of that, let's actually go back to character select screen and update it for player 2 hovered character text. Just to be consistent, that should also have a Z order of 1. Go back to the stage select. You can see my font, my sizes. So now for this one, we haven't actually done it yet, but it's going to be super simple. We're going to go to move selection, just like we did in the character select screen. Now move selection in this one is a little bit bigger because I experimented with different methods and was showing different ways you could display the screen to the user. But we can actually ignore most of that and go right behind that. and we'll make room for a new function we're going to create. So go ahead and add a function. We're going to call it set hovered stage text. Actually, let's do name instead of text, because I believe that's what we did on the character select. For our input parameters, we only need one right now, and that will be our index. So we can do hovered stage index as an integer. Then we're going to get a select statement, put the hovered stage index into the index on the select, then change the pin type, which it won't let me do. So then instead we will do make literal text. Then we'll start typing these out. So I know my first one is my training room or level 1, and then I have my training room 2, Trail of the Wise, and the furnace. So I know I use training room 2. And for my first one, training room. Then we have Trail of the Wise. And let's call it the furnace. I think we just did furnace before, but the furnace sounds kind of nice. And now we want to return the value into our text to set. In this case, I didn't actually pass it in because we only have one right now, but we may want to pass it in later. So let's go to our hovered stage text variable, get it. We want to call it set text, in parentheses text on it. And it'll work just like this. So we can compile and save. Now in move selection, we want to call this function regardless if it was player 1 or player 2. So we're going to call set hovered stage name right here. There we go, something like that will do the trick. And then for the hovered stage index, we can pass in current P1 and current P2 selection. Current P1 selection and current P2 selection. In my game, player 2 doesn't actually have their selection displayed, only player 1 does at the current time. So I'm going to leave the player 2 logic out. Everything's going to route through the current P1 selection. So this is how you would do it for player 2, but we're not actually going to need that for today's episode unless you have specific reasoning for your logic. So now it looks like this in move selection. I can compile and save, run my game. And you can see the names change as they should. And so does the stage name. So there we go, guys. That's how we can improve our character select and stage select screen in our fighting game. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and consider joining the YouTube membership, Patreon members, or Discord subscribers. Thank you guys for all the love and support. I'm really grateful. If you ran into any problems following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you out with all that. That's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.